Hey everybody, I'm rjcurrer, and we're back with another express adventure, or at least that's what I'm calling them. Adventures that are short, easy for us to build within the span of maybe an hour or so, and the perfect kind of thing to do when you're on a time crunch and you need an adventure for tonight's session. So, as usual, I've done a little bit of pre-work on this. This adventure is the Sunken Tower. At least that's my working title for it. Maybe we'll come up with something cooler later. But that was really the idea that I had that kind of sparked this, was the idea of this submerged wizard's tower that had, maybe it had been on the edge of a river and it had toppled over into it eons ago, so that now it's covered in silt. It's sunk beneath the river bottom, and it becomes sort of this mix of man-made and cave structure for the characters to explore. I am pulling on some inspiration from real life. If you know anything about my background, I spent about 10 years as a professional diver. And so to come up with this idea, I was really thinking about experiences I've had and moments that felt sort of quote unquote adventurous. And I won't go into details on diving in terms of that being an adventure, although I certainly think that it is. But I've certainly had some black water experiences, right, where low visibility and silty rivers and that kind of deal. And, that kind of inspired me for this. So I sat down and started kind of hashing out the framework for this structure in terms of what level party I wanted to do and what kind of party composition. And so I settled on about four adventurers, so four player characters, and that's typically where I kind of sit. Most of my groups, I find that the sweet spot's around four. But I didn't know where I'd want this to fit into the context of a larger campaign, and so I thought that I would set this up so that it's easily scalable, so that if my characters or pursue this early on, they get a fun adventure that they can still accomplish, or if they pursue it later on, they still get one that presents enough of a challenge. So, the idea of this sort of wizard's tower makes me think that it kind of toppled over into the river eons ago. And so now it's broken up into chunks. And so, like any good adventure design, we're going to start by just kind of brainstorming on the page. And so I'm thinking maybe there's a chunk that is maybe about that size. And it would be rectangular because it was a cylinder and it's kind of fallen over, and so the top-down view we'd see a rectangle, but the bottom would be all silt in here, and then the walls, at least the long sides here, would be that arching stone. And I would think that the floor boards, which would become kind of these short walls here, um, we could say that they're rotted wood and they're kind of easy to get through, but I don't know that I like that idea. I think I like the idea that they've been down there so long, they've kind of soaked up some of the minerals from the water, and now they're petrified wood. So they look like wood, but they're almost as hard as stone. Um, Now that being said, we might still have some doors that are intact, and on one end or the other, we could kind of envision these as having been trap doors that are now sort of passages between one side and the next. But that's probably a little too much detail for our brainstorming there, but that's sort of the basis of what I'm thinking about. And I'm thinking we've probably got three chunks here, but I don't want them to be exactly linear, because, I'll be honest with you, I'm not a huge fan of linear dungeons. I really like it when there's branching and there's places to explore. And so I want to have that. And speaking of that, I want to make sure that I've got a second entry, um, somewhere that is not directly part of the wizard's tower, as it were, but maybe part of the cave system. And so we've got, another kind of maybe cave section off to the side, that can be explored. And maybe that's next to another segment of the wizard's tower. Maybe that segment is, let's see, we said this was what, four across, so let's make this about three or so. Give that some basic shape. But that's maybe at an angle because this didn't fall straight on. Um, And then we'll say maybe we've got another segment that is, oh, let's put it over here. And this will be our top section of our tower, which means it probably needs a bit of a conical roof. What do you think? Yeah, okay, something like that. So then these need to be connected in certain ways, and I want there to be more kind of cave structure in here as well. So maybe there's one that's sort of at the foot of this one here, and that's kind of the antechamber to the access, because I can see this being the climax of the adventure taking place in here. You know, where our treasure, if that's what we're hunting, or the creature that we face, that's in the end of the encounter here. And then let's see here. We don't want this to just kind of come direct. So, but we don't want this to be super long either. So maybe we're going to have, maybe we'll put another cave structure here. And, okay. So I had this idea a long time ago about a bronze dragon that, you know, they're amphibious, right? So this idea that maybe it was a collector of nautical artifacts, loose shipwrecks. Maybe it's building one up in its lair, kind of like a model ship, but like life size. So I could kind of see something like that being a part of this. I've never really gotten a chance to use that idea, but I kind of like that. Let's hold on to that. Let's make a note. Let's see here. Let's use actual pencil, so it's a little bit easy to read. Let's see. Dragon. Bronze. Cool. Now that's probably a little bit like beefy for the kind of levels we're looking at here, because I'm thinking tier 1 just for this example. And I'll talk more about kind of what I've done here in a minute when we get to it, because this is all combat encounter kind of stuff that I've done some prep work on. And so let's hold on to that. So let's think about pathways here. We want, let's see here, we probably want this to connect here. We want, that to connect here. Maybe some twists and turns. Because if this is our terminus, if this is our end where we want to get to, then the roads need to lead there. And so we want that there. We want this here. Let's see. We've got 2 branches here, but they're very linear, right? There's no looping in here. We want to fix that. So let's say, let's make a passage that connects there. And let's make one that goes from here down to here. Because we've got multiple access points to this main node. Lots of ways we can get there. That gives us a loop here. That gives us a loop there. That gives us, a loop through there. So lots of options. I feel like though there needs to be something here. Let's put another chamber here. Let's put something in there, another cavern. And then I kind of like the idea of these passages being, maybe they're secret. So this feels like it's very branching until you find some of the secret rooms, some secret doors, and now we've got lots of access points here. Okay, so I kind of like that design, but let's think about what we might put in different places first before we go too much farther with this. So, all right, so let's talk about this a little bit. So I was doing some research in terms of underwater creatures, and I'll be honest with you, there's a little bit of a dearth of low-level underwater creatures just in the monster manual and in the basic rule set, which typically for these videos is what I kind of limit myself to, because that's what everybody's got, right? If you've got access to other resources that have other options, that's awesome, but one of the challenges that I kind of like to give myself is to have a limited set of resources when I do these sorts of videos and I create these for you all, and then see how that forces me to think outside the box, right? So I was going through and I was thinking, okay, what's a 1v1 challenge rating, right? So that if I've got, 4 adventurers, I can have 4 of said monster for whatever level these are. So I started my list off with that, and then that gave me this list here for underwater creatures. It gave me, a CR, 1/4 as a constrictor snake, and I thought that could be reskinned pretty easily into a giant eel. For 1/2, we had a reef shark, and I thought it'd be cool since it's a river instead of making this kind of a bull shark kind of thing, which you absolutely could, even within the context of real life. Uh, but I thought it'd be cooler to make it like a giant catfish, really keep in with the river monster sort of theme. And then Challenger Rating 1, you get the swarm of kippers and then a giant octopus. And I love octopi. They are really cool creatures, as any diver will tell you. And so I want to work an octopus into this somehow, one way or the other. So then that kind of got me thinking about kind of boss level monsters. And so this isn't like, I didn't pick a challenge rating that was a whole group of 4 against, one of these creatures. Well, I guess I did in some context here for levels, what I think, 3 and 4. That's kind of what it comes down to. But that's only for a medium difficulty encounter. And we want this to be a deadly difficulty encounter, right? So, so I came up with a list of ones that were a ratio of 3-to-1, so 3 player characters to 1 monster, or 4-to-1, 4 player characters to 1 monster, and wrote that out for these levels, right? So, for example, this level 1, 3, we could have 3 player characters that would be against this 1/2 monster, and that would give us a medium difficulty encounter, and we could bump it up a little bit by tossing in 3 of these smaller monsters here, to kind of take that from a medium difficulty to a hard or a deadly encounter. And then because there really isn't a lot that I liked in the vein of 2 or 3 here, and we've kind of got this theme of the Wizard's Tower here, I thought it'd be fun to take a monster and just kind of create a table here that lets me scale it up easily, scale it up or down easily, so that we have one central kind of beast to build this around with, but with balanced stats. They're going to make it a far more balanced creature to deal with. And maybe that's what we'll do the giant octopus for, because I kind of like that idea of closing off here with a spell-tainted octopus. Ooh, I like that term. Okay, that's what we're going with here. Okay, so that's where we're gonna have our climax here, our final encounter. All right, so want that there. We need some rooms that don't have much in them. We want rooms that have more than just combat in them. And since we got this antechamber here, maybe we want to go with a tried and true, that there's something that the players need to do to access this. So maybe this door is locked, and maybe it's a wizard's tower, right? So maybe it was warded, but it's been in ruin for quite some time. So maybe it is, maybe the ward's been faulty on that. So yeah, so let's see, faulty ward, and we'll sketch this in more permanently in pencil and in marker here in a bit, but I'm just kind of getting the idea. So kind of a faulty ward, And let's tough that up. Let's put an encounter in here as well. So that while the players are dealing with this potentially hazard faulty ward, they've got something else that's kind of going on. I like to put two conflicting objectives in encounters when I'm trying to make something extra challenging or extra interesting, because now the players have to decide what they're going to prioritize, what they're going to go for first, which makes for inherently interesting choices at the gaming table. Cool. So we've got some fun stuff to play with here. Let's... how do we get past that ward? So, if it's faulty, I can see kind of intermittently going off, threatening the party. You know, we could go with sort of basic ways of deactivating it. We'll probably include that, something like an Arcana check. But I could also see a key. A key that shuts the ward down and opens the door at the same time, kind of lost throughout the muck and mire here. So let's make a note of that. Let's put key. Ooh, maybe the dragon. Maybe if there's a dragon here, maybe that has it. Where would we put that? We could make this center room, since it's kind of a larger chamber and kind of the intersection of all this. And we don't have a lot of thinking monsters here. We got a lot of beasts. Maybe this is the dragon's lair. Maybe there's, maybe this is like a young bronze dragon. This is like their new lair that they're setting up. And so they haven't done much in terms of kind of cleaning everything else out yet. They're not particularly interested in magic. They're more interested in these ships, I'm kind of thinking. And so maybe they have this lair in here. And maybe among sort of their initial explorations, they found this key and they've added it to their collection. And now the dragon would be kind of OP in terms of like combat for the characters, and something that they would probably catch on to pretty quickly. That could be very difficult for them to try to take on, unless they're a larger group of like 4th level characters or something like that. But they could negotiate with it. And maybe that's a little bit of the puzzle here, that if they've negotiated with the dragon, they've gotten the key, they come down in here, they do that before they get here or after, before they handle a faulty ward, and that kind of shuts down the ward for them, eliminating part of this and streamlining their objective in this space. So it gives them kind of a story reward. It makes a little bit of this going forward easier on them if they've already done the hard bit up front. And this gives us something other than like a combat encounter to deal with. I like that. Okay. But we still need some combat. So let's put a fight here. And let's put a fight here. And they need something to negotiate with the dragon. Because pretty please, Mr. Dragon, please give me something out of your horde is less likely to actually function, is actually work. So if it's the dragons into nautical things, maybe we put some, since it's a lot of stuff kind of, I don't know if you've ever been, trolling along the bottom of a river, but it's full of crap. There's just tons of just junk down at the bottom of many, like down in the silt of a lot of rivers, especially ones around, inhabited areas. And so maybe we just kind of have some junk in all of these that have kind of piled up over the years in these these cavern areas here. And we could have among the junk, some pieces of I guess things for a nautical enthusiast. I'm sure there's a word for that. And if there is, let me know in the chat. I would like to learn a new word. But we could put something that would have no value to the characters, but would have value to our collector dragon in these spaces, kind of rewarding them if they've explored and they've noticed these things. They come down here and they kind of get a vibe for what the dragon's looking for, and they decide to go back and collect that kind of stuff. That could be That could be very cool. So, yeah, I think we got the basics here. This is a nice, short, easy one. Depending on how long you run your sessions, this could take up pretty much the whole thing. All right, GMs, show of hands. When was the last time you actually got to be a player? If you want to get out from behind the DM screen and into the game, then join one of my tables at startplaying.games/GM/rjcurrer. We can all use a break from the forever DM lifestyle sometimes, and the fastest way to improve as a GM is to spend some time as a player. Thanks for listening. Now back to our video. We'll figure out the details on these in a minute, but let's go ahead and sketch out these spaces. So this one's pretty solidly done already, so we'll just kind of give that a little bit of shape. And let's give this one a little bit of room and give it just a little bit of variation. Yeah, these don't need to be huge, but they can be wandering. And I kind of have this idea that this whole thing is sort of underwater, which is, again, talking about the bottom of the river here. And so the question becomes, well, how do you handle that? Well, I think we're just going to go simple on this. I think we're going to say something along the lines of like, the benefactor that they're getting whatever they want from this for, or the town that wants them to get rid of this menace that's, plaguing their fishing boats and stuff like that, or the river boats. I'm thinking that we're just going to make that patron give them something like, I don't know, like a cap of water breathing or something, or maybe scrolls of water breathing or rings of water breathing, kind of like as lunar items, and maybe they get to keep them as part of the reward to the quest. But I think that makes kind of a cool, gives us a reason to be underwater and do a cool thing, which is always fun. So yeah, let's put a door here, and that. Oop. Needed a research time. Okay, cool. Because we forgot to kind of put that in here. Maybe this is broken. The tower is not perfectly intact in every place. So kind of spills in there. You've kind of got the openings there. Okay, and then of course we have our secret passages. Again, you don't always need to go super complicated with this stuff. In fact, a lot of the time, the easier it is to run, the more room you have to really make it your own in the moment. Because you're not trying to figure out what's supposed to be happening. You're really just thinking about what is happening. This is just a eraser pencil. Cool. Okay. Let's get some detail in here then. Okay, let's start by kind of really putting down. And again, this stuff is just for me, right? So I'm just kind of making things as simple as I can. I'm not really worrying too much about the lines and how clean they are. If I want clean lines that I want to send to people, I will use my digital art program, Krita, where I can Control Z till the cows come home. Assuming I had cows. Okay. Cool. All right. It's not going to take long here. And you could just kind of dot this out too if you wanted to. I mean, again, if it's for you, you can just do, a kind of a gesture map, right? Where you're not really worried about the shape of each corridor and, doing all the squiggly little lines here and all those little fiddly bits. You could just kind of connect things with the kind of lines that we did as part of our sketch, because they really only need to make sense to you. But I find that I like to have this kind of shape for me because it helps me imagine how these spaces actually fit together, and so I can help narrate some of this. And not the cleanest artwork I've ever done, but you know what? I'm not sure I care. It's quick and it's easy and it does the job. Why not use it? Okay. Cool. All right, so we got some of our basic shapes in here. Let's put in just a little bit of extra detail. Just to, so you kind of have an idea of what's where. Put my little star here so I know what I'm talking about. Cool, and these are my piles of junk built up in here. And seriously, rivers are amazing for just the sheer amount of just crap that builds up in them. If you ever want just random things to show up in your game, have it come from a river. My goodness. Cool. We'll put a little star icon there. Make a note about our secret passages here. Cool. I'd say you can never have too many secret passages, but you can. It's just hard to have too many. And then let's just kind of give ourselves just a little bit of detail here in terms of what our dragon is doing. And to differentiate that from the tower shape, let's give it some masts, like a battleship, maybe a bowsprit. Cool. All right, so that's what we need for our map. That's about all the detail that we need to put into it in terms of the actual shaping. So let's go ahead and start adding some notes on what actually goes in here. So one of the advantages of kind of doing this bit of AC, HP to hit damage and DC, and I just pulled this out of the 2014 Dungeon Master's Guide. I think it's chapter 9 on creating monsters, whatever. It literally has a table that says, okay, Challenge Rating 1, balanced for AC 13, gives you the 60 HP. It gives you all this information. But it also gives you a DC, right? It's balanced for whatever level your average level of the party is. And so we're going to use that as kind of our base DC for everything that is needed here, right? So let's start with our dragon. So let's see. What's a good name for our dragon? Nimitz is an aircraft carrier. We could do Nimrix. I always like putting an X or something in a dragon's name. Makes it sound scaly. I don't know. Okay, let's see. Nimrix. And we'll say young bronze dragon. Cool. We're going to say has key. We'll say DC 13 to say trade for it. Cool. Collects nautical trinkets. I'll just put a arrow into that space there so we know. Great. Okay. And then let's kind of note for ourselves, we'll say nautical trinket. And when we say that, I mean, it could be a big thing, right? It could be the ship's wheel. I mean, it could be, a piece of the bowsprit. It could be, sections of rigging. It could be all kinds of stuff. Maybe it's a brass porthole or something along those lines. And so then we'll do the same kind of thing over here. We'll say nautical trinket, not to be confused with the bear trinket. Okay. So we've got that. So like I said, for the climax here, I really like the idea of doing this, a spell tainted octopus. So let's give ourselves some let's do it down here because we'll probably use, maybe use this space for here. So we give ourselves some room. So let's say spell tainted octopus. And we'll say giant octo. And we'll say use stats above. And it's just a reference to ourselves to kind of pull its AC, hit points, to hit, and the damage that it does from this list here, keeping everything else on the octopus stat block. But we also said that this is a spell tainted octopus because it's been living in the ruins of Wizard's Tower. Maybe it's been affected by that magic in some way. And I kind of like to think that it has, because that's going to make it a more interesting creature to deal with. So let's give it some spells. Let's give it some innate spell casting. So we'll say innate spell casting. And let's give it some simple ones. And we'll say, let's say at will. Let's make it easy for ourselves. We'll say at will. So I kind of like to give sort of maybe some thematic spells on this. Some spells that aren't going to do damage or healing, but are just kind of going to wreak a little chaos and kind of maybe narrate easily into the idea of this octopus. And octopi, they can shoot ink, especially when they want to get away. And you'll see that there's something for that in the stat block. But maybe we could play on that with the spells as well. So maybe it has something like color spray that it can use. That does some blinding. Maybe it has like Misty Step, like it blasts that ink and sort of disappears and reappears in another burst of ink somewhere else. So let's say Misty Step. And let's give it 3. 3 is a good number. So another ability of octopi is that they can change the texture and the color of their skin. So they're really good at camouflage. And again, that's highlighted in the stat block, not as explicitly, but maybe this one, since it's kind of spell tainted, maybe it can make itself look a little blurry, so it's harder to hit. So maybe it gets blur as well. So that's good. You can do all of those things. Now, you'll notice up here, one of the things that I did coming up with the damage is that instead of kind of, it levels, challenge ratings, I should say, 2 and 3. Um, you know, the amount of damage that they're doing creates, is kind of above and beyond the kind of, one kind of hit dice rolls that we would do. And so rather I gave it multi-attack, and so I gave it 2 attacks with its tentacles here. So, so instead of doing 1 tentacle attack like it normally has for challenge rating 1, it does, it's going to do 2 of them instead for challenge rating 2. And then I just bumped up its strength score for challenge rating 3, just to kind of make the math work out. Because again, I'm not really worried about, when we're doing something quick like this, I'm not necessarily worried about explaining why, this one's a 2d6 and that one's a 2d8, although you could simply do that with, it's a juvenile, it's young. I'm really just kind of worried about the damage math, breaking out, because the players are never going to see the calculations that go into the rolls in most cases. So it's really just important that we're hitting kind of an average amount of damage for that particular challenge rating. And since these two have multi-attack, maybe it would be fun to say, we'll say if multi-attack, let's say 2x tentacles or 1x tentacles and color spray or blur. So it has a little bit of flexibility on its turn at those higher levels, which is what we want. So now that being said, this is really just going to kind of give us a medium challenge rating. So let's say, so we've got that. Let's also give it some kind of minions with it here, right? Something else that kind of cohabitates inside its lair. And so let's give it some more of these. We'll say something simple like, 2x creatures 1/1 CR is what I'd put here. And so the idea being that, like, I'm gonna, if this was a level 3 group, they'd have the 1 octopus, and then they'd have 2 1/2 rating creatures in here, like, these catfish in this case, just to take it from a difficult, just kind of take it from a medium difficulty encounter to a perhaps deadly or hard encounter. So that gives us our counter here, and then we'll also say MacGuffin and treasure hoard. And for this, I would just roll on the DMG, we'll say 2014 DMG. So this remind me that I would roll on the treasure hoard table for whatever level, whatever the challenge rating the boss is here. I think it's a 0 to 4, so it would all be that same, that one table. But that would kind of dictate what's left in here without me having to put a lot of thought into it, making it kind of nice and simple, and also giving us the likelihood there's going to be some magic items in here, which feels good since this is going to be a mage's tower. No matter how long it's spent underwater, there'd be some good stuff. I mean, get away with things like scrolls and spell books being in there by the ones that are left having been sealed up in in watertight containers and that kind of thing. So we've got that. Now we need our encounter out here. So let's say that we have our faulty ward. Faulty ward. And let's say something like, I like the idea of it maybe being pulsing electrical damage, especially since this is underwater. You can kind of feel the idea, the crackle of the electricity arcing out into the water, potentially, zapping party members. So let's say, but I want this to be kind of variable, right? I don't want it to be an all the time. They walk into the room and they get zapped. I want there to be some randomness to it, so it's a little less predictable. It's a little more chaotic. This feels like a very chaotic space. So let's say something like, let's say roll 1d4 and triggers on one. And I would do this like every round. We might say R&D, so round. So the idea is, they're in there, they're doing their thing, and every round, we're going to roll a 1d4. That makes a 25% chance that it's going to trigger, right? So we do that, and then if it does, we'll say that it's a 20-foot cube from door. And let's mark this as locked, by the way. And that would be the door. And we'd say con DC 13 and 2d6 lightning damage. So I don't want it to be too deadly, right? Especially because it's going to be an ongoing thing. And so 2d6, that means the average damage that's going to come out of this is going to be 7 damage, right? Because 1 plus 6 is 7 divided by 2 is going to be 3.5. So for every d6, our average damage is 3.5. So 2d6 is 3.5 plus 3.5, so that's 7 points of damage on average. Cool. So 2d6 lightning, and we'll say half on save. Cool. We want to make sure that we note that the key disarms. I might say no trigger. So maybe just having the key in the room keeps it from triggering. Okay, that part of the magic can be left. Probably shouldn't have done that in pen. I probably should have done that in fine liner just to keep myself from going insane. Cool. All right. And we can say alt disarm is DC 13 Arcana. Cool. So that's the trap in here. So the idea being that somebody who rolls high enough in Arcana knows which runes to scratch out or deface or otherwise disable. So that's our trap in here, but we also want something else to be going on. We want that encounter. So let's say we want 4x creatures and that are 1v1 CR. So 1-to-1 CR. So same kind of deal as before, but 4 of them here, creating a medium encounter since we have 4 player characters for this. And I haven't written that down here, have I? So let's say PDCs equal 4. Cool. Cool. So that'll give us a medium difficulty encounter here. While they're working with the trap, will make this especially challenging. And you might, point out that, well, they're going to encounter the same kind of creature here. Here is the encounter here, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Having the characters encounter the same creature multiple times throughout an adventure means they're going to get better at battling it, and it rewards them for the information that they glean during a combat encounter, right? So it gets them to pay. It rewards them for paying attention, right? So it's another level of rewarding your players throughout the adventure. Now, you don't want to do a million adventures in a row where it's all the same creatures. I would change creatures between adventures, and to have a little bit of variation within an adventure. But there's nothing wrong with something this small having a lot of the same kind of creature. They'd all be kind of living near each other potentially. Cool. So we can keep it simple and do the same kind of thing here, and same kind of fight kind of deal going on here and here, except they don't have to be fights necessarily. Maybe the fight was the wrong way to go with that, because we've got a little bit of this. So maybe it's an encounter, and they could be handled in a variety of ways. One being a fight, another being maybe they're feeding these creatures, just kind of dealing with the challenge in front of them in a number of different ways. These are all kind of beasts, so they might just be hungry. That might be a way to deal with these. So let's make note. So let's say, let's make these relatively simple. We don't want them to be necessarily as difficult as this. Certainly not as difficult as this. So let's keep these pretty light. Let's say 3x creatures that are 1-on-1 CR, and we'll say that they are hungry, may lose interest for food. Cool. So that gives us, a simple encounter in both of these areas that teaches the characters there might be other ways to get around this. Now these guys, let's make them hostile, just to make sure there's a fight that goes on in here. But maybe, depending on what the goal is for our adventure, this creature may or may not be hostile. Or, it probably will be. Let's be honest. They're probably going to fight it. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that. Cool. So with that, we've got pretty much everything that we need in here. Let's go ahead and number our rooms just so that we kind of know what we're looking at. So let's say 1, say 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So a nice simple adventure, very quick to build, very easy to run. That could fill up I'd say probably a 2-hour session. At least my players would spend all 2 hours working on this one. It gives us a nice mix of combat with some options to avoid combat in particular situations, to kind of get out of it. And then gives us a cool little atmospheric kind of vibe, and even a social encounter with a nice reward. And what if, let's see, let's put a little star here. Sorry, before we get too distracted, let's mark this so we know what room it's in. Let's say rooms 1 and 5, because that'll be kind of both of those. But let's also put a little asterisk up here, and let's say on a crit success, let's see, Nimrix might gift a bag of holding. In addition to the key, maybe under the pretense that he's kind of hoping that the characters will find more cool nautical stuff and remember him and bring those to him as a gift later on. So anyway, we've got a simple little adventure here that's easy to run, that gives us a lot of flavor, a lot to work with, gives us perhaps an NPC that can come back again and again and again. But at the very minimum, a cool little social encounter with a good mix of combat and a fun little puzzly trap towards the end. And frankly, that's all we need for a fun night of D&D. So thank you so much for joining me. If you've enjoyed this, please like, subscribe, leave a comment. All that kind of helps build the channel. If you enjoy my adventures and you'd like to perhaps play one or acquire one for yourself, you can buy a lot of my adventures on the DMs Guild by looking me up there, rjcurrer, spelled just like my channel. And you can also join my tables at startplaying.games /GM/rjcurrer. So come join one of my one shots or one of my campaigns, and hopefully I will see you there.